Welcome back to the book club. And as we are journeying through Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation, we have explored how the digital age impacts mental health, relationships, and resilience. Today, we're turning to chapter 8, titled Spiritual Elevation and Degradation. This chapter dives into something deeper, how our phone-based lifestyle influences not just our thoughts and behaviors, but also our sense of meaning, connection, and well-being. Now, Haidt writes on page 199, and I'm going to read it to you. He says, the phone-based life produces spiritual degradation, not just in adolescence, but in all of us. And then, a little further down on the next page, on page 200, he says, whether or not God exists, people simply do perceive some people, places, actions, and objects to be sacred, pure, and elevating. Other people, places, actions, or objects are disgusting, impure, and degrading, meaning literally brought down a step. These observations highlight an essential aspect of human nature. We are spiritual beings wired to seek connection, meaning, and transcendence. Whether it's a walk in nature, a heartfelt conversation, or participation in a faith-based practice, these moments elevate us. They help us feel whole, connected, and grounded in something bigger than ourselves. But the phone-based life often pulls us in the opposite direction. Social media and constant connectivity prioritize the immediate, the superficial, the transactional, instead of fostering sacred moments. They can fill our lives with comparison, outrage, and trivial distractions that leave us feeling disconnected and degraded. Haidt's point isn't religious. It's about recognizing the human need for practices that elevate us, whether through spiritual traditions, family rituals, or quiet reflection. Yet, many of these practices require time, focus, and intentionality, qualities that the phone-based lifestyle tend to erode. So let's begin by exploring the first practice that Haidt discusses, called shared sacredness. He says on page 204, and these are all practices that he says will help us in our lives. So on page 204, he says, in short, there is no consensual structuring of time, space, or objects around which people can use their ancient programming for sacredness to create religious or quasi-religious communities. Everything is available to every individual all the time with little or no effort. There is no Sabbath. There are no holy days. Everything is profane. Living in a world of structurelessness anime makes adolescents more vulnerable to online recruitment into radical political movements that offer moral clarity and a moral community, thereby pulling them further away from their in-person communities. So Haidt highlights the importance of shared sacredness, structured moments, spaces, and rituals that give life meaning. Historically, these have been tied to religious or cultural practices like Sabbaths or holy days, which foster community and moral clarity. In today's digital world, though, this structuring is lost. Everything is available on demand, blurring the boundaries between sacred and profane. The absence of shared sacredness leaves adolescents especially vulnerable to online communities that provide moral clarity, but often in destructive or polarizing ways. Radical movements fill the void once held by communal rituals, pulling them away from in-person relationships. How can we create meaningful rituals in our lives? One way to create shared sacredness in our families is by focusing on gratitude. So for the next week, take a few minutes each day, perhaps at dinner time or before bedtime, to share what you're grateful for with each other. These moments can create a sense of connection and meaning, reminding everyone what truly matters and fostering a sense of togetherness. So let's move on from the idea of shared sacredness to another essential practice that fosters connection, the importance of physical presence and shared experiences. And this is what Haidt calls embodiment. And he says on page 205, people who break bread together have a bond. The simple act of eating together, especially from the same plate or dish, strengthens that bond and reduces the likelihood of conflict. This is one deficiency the virtual world can never overcome, no matter how good VR gets. The physical act of being together, especially through shared meals, creates a bond that the virtual world can never replicate. Sharing food is one of humanity's oldest rituals, transcending cultures and time. And it's not just nourishment, it's about connection. In the digital age, where meals are often eaten separately or in front of screens, this ancient practice is slipping away. Haidt reminds us that embodiment, being physically present and sharing tangible experiences, fosters trust and reduces conflict. This raises an important question. How can we ensure we don't lose these embodied moments? Well, we can prioritize family meals where devices are set aside and the focus is on conversations and connection. Even the simplest act of sharing a serving dish can have profound effects on relationships. Haidt argues that the phone-based life makes it difficult for us to experience stillness and silence, both when we're with others and when we're alone. This short story, The Music That Disappeared, is a simple way to help your child understand why silence isn't empty, it's meaningful. Read this aloud to your child. The Music That Disappeared. 12-year-old Jonah loved music. He listened to it all the time while he was doing homework, playing games, texting his friends, even when falling asleep. His playlist was always on, filling every quiet moment with sound. One weekend, Jonah's grandfather took him on a camping trip. They hiked through the towering trees, watched the sky turn golden at sunset, and sat by the fire as crickets chirped around them. That night, as Jonah scrolled through his phone, his grandfather chuckled. "What are you looking for?" "Just picking a song to play while I fall asleep," Jonah said. His grandfather shook his head. "Try something different tonight. Just listen." Jonah sighed, but he put his phone down. At first, it felt weird, too quiet. But then he noticed something new. The wind rustled through the trees. A distant owl hooted. The fire crackled softly. For the first time in a long time, Jonah just listened. The next morning, as they walked by the lake, Jonah said, "I never realized how much was out there. It's like I've been drowning out the real music." His grandfather smiled. "That's what happens when we fill every moment with noise. We stop hearing the things that matter." Jonah thought about his daily life, the nonstop notifications, the endless videos, the pressure to always be online. It was like he had been playing music so loud that he couldn't hear the important things, his own thoughts, the people around him, the beauty of quiet moments. His grandfather stopped and gestured at the still water of the lake, the early morning mist curling above it. "Some moments are sacred, Jonah. They aren't meant to have background noise. You don't just hear them, you feel them." As they packed up, Jonah looked at his phone. He knew he would still use it, but now he understood something that he hadn't before. Sometimes you just need to turn the music off to hear what really matters. After sharing this story, spark a conversation with your child with this question. Why do you think we often try to fill every moment with sound or distractions? Jonah realized when we always fill the quiet with noise, we miss what truly matters. This is exactly what Haidt warns about. The phone-based life makes stillness rare, leaving us disconnected from our thoughts and surroundings. So let's explore how the phone-based life disrupts the inner stillness and what we can do to regain it. So he says on page 207, the phone-based life makes it difficult for people to be fully present with others when they are with others, and to sit silently with themselves when they are alone. If we want to experience stillness and silence, and if we want to develop focus and a sense of unified consciousness, we must reduce the flow of stimulation into our eyes and ears. Haidt argues that the phone-based lifestyle makes stillness and silence increasingly rare, robbing us of the ability to be present with others or comfortable in solitude. Constant notifications, videos, and messages create a state of perpetual distraction, fragmenting our focus and inner peace. The antidote lies in intentional reduction. To experience true stillness, we must deliberately decrease the input flowing into our eyes and ears. So, what simple practices can help us and our children discover or rediscover stillness? Well, one simple, specific way parents can do this is to foster stillness and focus with their kids is by setting aside 10 to 15 minutes each day for a quiet family activity, such as sitting outside and observing nature, drawing, or practicing deep breathing together. During this time, there are no phones, no screens, and no distractions, just a shared moment of peaceful presence. Now, stillness and silence prepare us for something even deeper, the ability to step outside ourselves and connect with something greater. So let's take a look at what Haidt talks about transcending the self. And he says on page 209, to experience more self-transcendence, we need to turn down the things in our lives that activate the profane mode network and bind us tightly to our egos, such as time on social media. We need to seek out conditions and activities that have the opposite effect, as most spiritual practices do, including prayer, meditation, mindfulness. Self-transcendence, the feeling of being a part of something larger than ourselves, requires us to step outside the ego. Haidt argues that social media, with its emphasis on likes, followers, and personal identity, binds us tightly to our egos, making self-transcendence harder to achieve. Spiritual practices such as prayer, meditation, and mindfulness are tools for assessing this elevated state. These practices shift our focus away from the profane and toward the sacred, fostering humility, gratitude, and interconnectedness. Well, how can we create opportunities to help our children and ourselves experience the beauty of self-transcendence? A specific activity parents can try with their kids is spending time volunteering together, whether it's helping out a local food bank, cleaning up at a park, or visiting an animal shelter. Acts of service shift the focus from self to others, fostering a sense of connection and purpose beyond individual concerns. So now let's turn our attention to practices that help us foster forgiveness and grace. So his next principle is called be slow to anger and quick to forgive. And he talks on page 211. Martin Luther King said, we must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power to love. There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our enemies. And then further down, he says, from a spiritual perspective, social media is a disease of the mind. Spiritual practices and virtues such as forgiveness, grace, and love are a cure. As Buddha put it, in this world, hate never yet dispelled hate. Only love dispels hate. This is the law, ancient and inexhaustible. Haidt references Martin Luther King Jr. and Buddha to emphasize the power of forgiveness and love. Social media, with its divisiveness and outrage cycles, breeds anger and judgment. In contrast, spiritual virtues like forgiveness and grace heal us and our relationships. Forgiveness isn't excusing harm. It's about releasing ourselves from the weight of anger. When we recognize that no one is purely good or evil, we become less prone to hatred and more open to compassion. So how can we teach and model forgiveness in a culture that is often fueled by anger? A specific activity parents can try with their kids is creating a kindness jar. As a family, write down acts of kindness or moments of forgiveness that you notice throughout the week on slips of paper. You can jot down things like, Sarah shared a toy with her brother when he was upset, or Dad apologized when he was frustrated. At the end of the week, gather together and read the slips aloud. This practice emphasizes grace, love, and recognizing the good in one another, making forgiveness and kindness a family habit. All right, and so the last thing we want to turn to that Haidt talks about is finding awe, A-W-E, in nature. And he talks about on page 215. As for our children, if we want awe and natural beauty to play a larger role in our lives, we need to make deliberate efforts to bring them or send them to beautiful natural areas without phones. Haidt points out the restorative power of nature, especially for children. Experiences of awe, standing beneath a towering forest, watching a sunset, or hearing waves crash, connect us to something larger than ourselves. But these moments are often diluted when accompanied by phones, which distract us from the present. How can we help our children and ourselves rediscover awe and connection through nature? Well, one specific activity parents can try with their children is a sunrise or sunset challenge. Choose a morning or evening, leave phones behind, and head to a spot where you can watch a sunrise or sunset together. Bring a blanket, sit quietly, and just observe the colors, sounds, and changes in the environment. Afterward, talk about what you noticed, how it made you feel, what stood out, or what it reminded you of. This simple yet profound experience invites awe and reflection, fostering a deeper connection to nature and each other. While awe in nature reconnects us to something larger, Haidt also explores the God-shaped hole, an internal longing for meaning that must be filled with what truly matters. So let's dive into his insights here. He says on page 215, and it goes on to page 216, many of my religious friends disagree about the origin of our God-shaped hole. They believe that the hole is there because we are God's creations and we long for our Creator. But although we disagree about its origins, we agree about its implications. There is a hole, an emptiness in all of us that we strive to fill. If it doesn't get filled with something noble and elevated, modern society will quickly pump it full of garbage. That has been true since the beginning of our age, the age of mass media. But the garbage pump got 100 times more powerful in the 2010s. So Haidt's description of the God-shaped hole underscores our universal need to seek meaning and connection. If we don't intentionally fill this emptiness with noble and meaningful practices, modern society will overwhelm us with shallow distractions. And it's not just the quality that's being pumped into us that's concerning. It's also the sheer volume. The age of smartphones and social media has exponentially increased the amount of negative, trivial, and harmful content that we're exposed to daily, making it even harder to seek what truly nourishes us. For families, this means helping children develop habits and priorities that protect them from this flood of garbage. Activities like shared rituals, time in nature, and genuine conversations can serve as powerful counters to the noise and emptiness of digital distractions, allowing us to fill our lives with what truly matters. So as we wrap up our exploration of Chapter 8, Haidt's Insights leaves us with an important challenge: to be intentional with how we structure our lives and guide our children. In a world that increasingly competes for our attention and feeds us shallow distractions, it's up to us to choose practices and moments that truly elevate and connect us. Whether it's through shared rituals like expressing gratitude, meaningful meals, free of devices, moments of stillness and reflection, or awe-inspiring experiences in nature, we have the power to reclaim the sacred in our lives. These practices don't just counter the noise of modern society. They help us and our children build resilience, meaning, and a sense of belonging to something greater than ourselves. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Haidt's Chapter 8. Together we can take steps to ensure our families are grounded, connected, and elevated above the chaos of the digital world. We'll see you next time.